Hey, it's Sam from Sugar Spun Run, and today we are making these fun strawberry Pop-Tart cookies. Okay, this is for every one of you who saw my brown sugar Pop-Tart cookies and immediately requested for a strawberry Pop-Tart version. It's just a fun gourmet cookie, and we're going to start by making our own from scratch strawberry filling. Definitely better than what you're going to get from a box in the store. So I'm starting on the stovetop, small saucepan. We're going to add a 1/4 cup of granulated sugar to this, and we are also going to be adding 2 teaspoons of cornstarch, which is going to help thicken this filling for us so that it stays nicely in our cookie. All right, let's go ahead and whisk these together. And next you're going to need 6 ounces of quartered strawberries. So I've already cut off the tops and quartered them, and then I measured them. You can use fresh or frozen. And this is 6 ounces, but if you don't have a scale, that's going to be about 1.5 cups. So go ahead and add these in. We're also going to add a little bit of lemon juice. We'll add 2 teaspoons of lemon juice. Squeeze that in there. Fresh is great if you have it, but bottled will work just fine here. All right, let's stir everything together. You want these strawberries to be nicely coated by the sugar and whatnot. And then we're going to turn our stovetop heat to medium-low, and we're going to cook this until the berries start to release their juices. Now, if you wanted to skip making your own filling, I do suspect that a store-bought strawberry jam would work, but I haven't tried it yet. If you try it, let me know how it works though. We don't want these berries to burn, so we're going to keep moving them while everything cooks. All right, once everything's nice and juicy, I'm going to grab my potato masher. If you don't have one, a fork will work. And we're gonna mash these up. It should be pretty easy because the berries should be nice and soft and juicy at this point. All right, after it's mashed, we're going to keep cooking this until it has begun to thicken. We're looking for it to start approaching a jelly-like consistency. It is going to thicken more as it cools, but this is bubbling a bit. Approaching that, I'm actually gonna turn off the heat. And let me show you, if I pull my spatula or spoon through it, it makes a trail that takes a second for the strawberries to start recovering. So holds its shape for a second. This is a pretty good sign that it's nice and thick for me. All right, so let me move away from my stovetop. All right, we're going to go ahead and pour this into a heat-proof bowl. All of that jam in there. All right, and I'm also going to add just a 1/2 tablespoon of butter. I'm using salted, but unsalted would be fine here as well. I'm just going to stir this in until it's completely melted. This helps give the jam a little bit of a nicer mouthfeel, makes it nice and glossy, and adds a little bit to the flavor. So we'll stir this until it's melted. And I'm gonna let this cool a little bit until it's not super hot to the touch. And then I'm going to cover it and I'm going to pop it in my refrigerator. That way it can chill completely, because you need this to be completely cooled and actually cold. That way it is as easy as possible to stuff inside the cookie dough, which we're about to make. All right, we'll be right back for that. All right, while that's chilling in the fridge, we're going to make our cookie dough. So this cookie dough comes together pretty easily. It's going to be a pretty thick cookie dough. It should be, because it needs to hold in that filling. And it starts with 1 cup of softened unsalted butter. Just gonna put this in a large mixing bowl, and then I'm going to add 1 1/3 cups of granulated sugar. And you could use a stand mixer for this recipe if you want. That would be totally fine. Just use the paddle attachment. But today I'm just going to be using my electric hand mixer. And we're going to cream together the butter and sugar until it is well creamed and light and fluffy. This usually takes about a minute or so. And I just want to pause for a second and point out that right here, the butter and sugar are combined, but they're not creamed. We want to go further until it's like light and fluffy looking. And I'll show you what that looks like. I just don't want anyone to stop here. And here we go. This is much better than how it looked a moment ago. The butter and sugar are well combined. The color is even a little bit lighter. I just don't want anyone stopping right at that point where the butter and sugar are just barely combined, because I know not everybody knows you're supposed to go this far. All right, next, our eggs. You're going to need 2 large eggs for this recipe, and ideally they should be at room temperature. So we'll add these to the batter along with a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Go ahead and mix everything together again until the eggs are nicely incorporated. We'll slide this out of the way and then grab a separate mixing bowl for your dry ingredients. So I already have my flour in here, and we are using 4 cups of cake flour today. I use cake flour in a lot of my gourmet cookies, and here especially it works really well because it's going to give you like a finer crumb. It's a little bit more similar to like a pastry dough that you'd have in a Pop-Tart, and it just works better for this cookie. However, because I am a good and benevolent baker, I am going to give you instructions in the notes on how to substitute all-purpose flour, just because I know not everyone can grab cake flour. Sometimes I can't even find it in the stores. but if you can find it, do yourself a favor and use cake flour. All right, we're also going to add a tablespoon of cornstarch, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, just a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, just a little bit, and 3/4 teaspoon of table salt. And we'll go ahead and whisk this together. Now, some people are probably going to ask about substituting like a homemade cake flour where you take all-purpose flour and then you replace some of it with cornstarch. I have not tried that. I'm gonna say in this instance, I'd be a little bit worried that the cookies could come out a little too cornstarchy, but if you try it with that substitute, let me know how it works. All right, let's bring back our butter. And we will gradually add our dry ingredients to our butter mixture. This dough is going to be a little bit on the drier side. I think I mentioned that earlier. So we do want to add this gradually. If you add it all at once, it's going to be difficult for the wet ingredients to absorb the dry ingredients. You're going to have a crumbly mess. You're going to be frustrated with me and ask me why your dough is so crumbly. So just be patient. Add it in like 4 parts. A little bit more than I meant to there. Such a piddly amount for our number 4 add, but here we are. All right. Always scrape the sides and bottom of your bowl, whether you're using an electric mixer or a stand mixer. Sometimes the dough doesn't get completely incorporated and you want it well incorporated, or it doesn't become uniform. All of the ingredients don't become well incorporated. Okay, I'm gonna grab my Nemesis plastic wrap, and we are going to cover this dough and we're going to let it chill for at least 30 minutes. So while this is chilling, our strawberry filling is going to continue to chill, which is great. So I say at least 30 minutes. I find between 30 to 60 minutes is the sweet spot with this dough. If you pull it out and it's just too sticky, put it back in the fridge for a little bit longer, but 30 minutes is usually sufficient for me. I do find that if I leave it in the fridge much longer than 60 minutes, it can be kind of difficult to work with, and I have to leave it at room temperature to get to a point where I even can work with. Just some things to keep in mind. I'll see you in 30 minutes. All right, once your dough has chilled, we can assemble our cookie dough. So this does take a little bit of patience, but it's not crazy difficult. We are going to scoop about a 1/4 cup of dough. This is 85 grams. We're going to take this and break it in 2. We're gonna roll this into a ball and form sort of like a nest. So I use my thumb to make a nest, and I'm gonna do the same thing with the other half. All right, next we need 2 teaspoons of filling. I have my handy dandy 2 teaspoon scoop. And remember, your filling needs to be completely cooled. Otherwise, it's gonna be difficult to work with. We're going to add that filling right in there. Try to keep it as nice and neat as possible. Take our other nest, place it over top. Oh, look at that, I kind of made a mess, but we can fix that because you don't want it coming out the side like that. I'm just gonna take a little bit more dough and patch that. And we're going to form this into a nice round ball. Handle it gently because it is a little bit delicate. All right, we're not going to bake the cookies yet. I'm going to assemble another one, and then we're going to chill this dough. Divide it in 2, make a nice deep nest. Oh, I should have formed this one before. Would have saved me a lot of stress. There we go. That still made it work. Pinch the edges together, seal in that filling, and then form gently into a ball shape. You're not going to get these amazing gourmet cookies without a little bit of effort, so just have a little patience and all will be well. I'll help myself out, do myself a favor and make that nest a little bit wider this time. Not just one thumbprint, but widen that thumbprint. And this dough is a little bit sticky still at this point. I find that is helpful. If it's too firm, it can be difficult to handle it quite as delicately as you need to. Your first cookie is probably just going to be your practice cookie, so just have a little patience. All right, we should be able to get 12 cookies out of this dough, but we're just going to focus on these for now. I'm going to freeze this dough before we bake it, and that is really important. We're going to put it in the freezer and let the dough chill for at least 15 minutes. If you want to chill it longer, like for days, what I would recommend is chill it for that 15 minutes, remove the cookie dough balls, wrap them in plastic wrap, and then put them in a plastic baggie. That way they don't start to taste like your freezer. If they sit uncovered for too long, they'll start to absorb some of those scents or odors from your freezer, even if you don't think your freezer is smelling. So while these are chilling, we're going to preheat our oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, so these have been sitting for 15 minutes. They should be much more solid now. We're gonna place them on our baking sheet, spacing the cookies at least 2 inches apart, because they're going to spread some. And off they go, ooh. Off they almost went to the floor. Off they go to the center rack of our 375 degree Fahrenheit preheated oven. They're going to need to bake for about 14 to 16 minutes. The very, very edges will be beginning to turn a light golden brown. You do not want to overbake them or make them too dark, or else your cookies are going to be dry and crumbly, which is so sad. All right, we are going to let these cookies cool completely on their baking sheet because they're going to be very fragile when they are warm. So once they're cooled, we can go ahead and make our icing. All right, the glaze comes together very quickly, and it is the same one that I used on my homemade strawberry Pop-Tarts that I shared a while ago. We're going to start with 1.5 cups of powdered sugar, and I've measured out 2 tablespoons of milk for this, but I'm only going to add about a tablespoon for now. I'm sure I'll need more, but it's better to start with less. I'm also going to add a tablespoon of light corn syrup. So this recipe will work without the corn syrup. You'll probably need a little more milk than indicated, but I like using it because it creates a very nice glossy finish, and it just tastes and feels a lot more like an authentic strawberry Pop-Tart icing. Corn syrup is not the same thing as high fructose corn syrup, and I do use it in quite a few recipes, like in my sugar cookie frosting. We're also going to add just a little bit of vanilla extract for flavor. I just add 1/4 teaspoon. Don't want to do too much. It can make the cookies seem too sweet. Nice and careful here. You really should never measure vanilla over your measuring bowl like I just did, because the risk of spilling it is high. All right, so we're going to whisk this together. Now, since we started with a smaller amount of milk, we are likely going to have to add more. This recipe is also very forgiving because if you don't use enough milk, it's very easy to add more, but if you accidentally use too much, you can just add more powdered sugar. So we do want this to be somewhat thick. I'll show you the consistency we're looking for, but the thicker it is, the firmer it's going to dry, and the faster it's going to dry. A little bit more, almost there. All right, so I'm pretty happy with this consistency. So you can see it's still kind of stiff, but the ribbon that is falling off of my whisk is holding its shape for several seconds before it dissolves completely back into the bowl of icing. So I think we're at like 10 seconds here, and it's still discernible. All right, so we're not going to decorate our cookies until they've cooled completely. These are nice and cool. I've just let them cool on the baking sheet, and I'm not going to move them over to a cooling rack because this will nicely catch any spills. I also have some Nonpareils. These are nice little sprinkles to put on top of the cookies, just like Pop-Tarts would have sprinkles on top. You can use regular jimmies or whatever you prefer. To decorate the cookies, we're just going to take a spoonful of that glaze, and I just smooth it over the surface of the cookie. And the icing should set pretty quickly, so we're going to add the sprinkles immediately. Now, I mentioned this earlier, but with these cookies, it's very important that you don't overbake them. It's tricky. You don't want to underbake them. You don't want to overbake them. I didn't really talk about this when I pulled them out of the oven, but you can see the bottoms are just beginning to turn a very light golden brown. And also, you won't be able to flip them over until after they've cooled completely, of course, but you'll know you cook them appropriately if you flip them over and the bottoms are just a light golden brown. Shouldn't be too dark, shouldn't be too light. This one is perfect. All right, in a perfect world, you will let the glaze harden on these cookies before you dig into them. I'm gonna try to be a little bit patient, but that is how you make the most recent addition to my gourmet cookie collection. If you're looking for other flavors, other gourmet cookies, let me know what you're thinking about, because I really like hearing your suggestions. Your suggestions are the reason that these exist today. Make sure to try out my brown sugar Pop-Tart cookies next if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. All right, the glaze is not set yet, but let's go ahead and cut into one of these babies. Oh yeah, you see that? It's a good cookie. Never ceases to amaze me. These are really good. Saucy? I feel like I'm being judged. Don't do it that way. There's a reason we don't do it that way. Thought I knew better. Colt? Put my finger in it because I couldn't avoid it.